Hey everyone, and welcome back to analyzing high-tier characters in Smash Ultimate. Today we're taking a look at Wario, definitely one of the more unique characters in the game, both in terms of gameplay and what kind of moves he has. He's also one of the lucky few characters that have seemingly gotten better in every game he's been in, and that definitely does show in his hitboxes. So why don't we take a look? If you want to vote on future characters and support me, you can do so on Patreon. There's a new poll there right now. As always, if there's a character you want me to cover in the future, let me know and I'll keep it in mind for next time. And as you probably know, the hitboxes were made by Zeckemyro. Wario's jab is not actually the usual jab structure we're all used to seeing. Now with that said, that's not really a good thing in this case. Unlike most other jabs, it's a two-hit attack. First attack looks like this, having 3 hitboxes on Wario's arm. It doesn't reach very far and is very slow for a jab. In fact, his down tilt is faster and his up tilt comes out on the same frame, both of which are significantly better moves, leaving jab 1 in a pretty redundant spot. Jab 2 has a better hitbox, but it's not really enough to justify having to use jab 1 before it. The move is just not that great. Wario's F tilt is the legendary slap, though not the one you're probably thinking of. Wario whips out the 5 fingers of punishment, and it consists of 2 hitboxes, a small sour spot on his arm that is very unlikely to actually hit, because it overlaps with the dominant red hitbox, which is actually the sweet spot, being significantly more powerful. The move can be angled up or down, but the hitboxes are the same. Now keep in mind that the model scaling does not show up on certain visuals, which is why Wario's hand is so small in the visual. Normally it should look like this, and the hurtbox scales accordingly. However, since his hand does not have a hurtbox, this doesn't really affect him that much. It effectively does have this disjoint. So the hitbox is accurate, though I do have to say it looks a bit weird not seeing Wario's oversized hand. Anyways, the move is great and has a bunch of active frames, making it great for covering options and just hitting opponents in general. Now down tilt must be one of the funnier hitboxes out of all of these. Wario pokes the ground with his hand, I guess, and I don't know what I was expecting, but the hitbox is just 2 very low hitboxes on the ground, the closest hitbox launching away, while the further purple one launches upwards. Pretty simple, but the move is very fast, and can set up into other quick moves afterwards, even into certain kill moves at higher percentages. It's a solid move and pretty safe due to having fairly low lag afterwards. For Wario's last tilt attack, we have another great one. Up tilt consists of Wario raising the roof, and along he has 2 hitboxes on his hands, and 1 on his body, meaning it effectively covers all of Wario, and quite a bit above him. Again, his hands are missing model scaling and should be bigger, but the hitbox is correct. I'm not going to mention this every single time, but I'll make a quick note on the screen whenever it's missing. And even still, a lot of the time you can probably tell just by looking at it. On the first part of the move, the hitboxes are stronger, which is actually a bit bad in this case since it makes it harder to combo with. However, the later part of the move is weaker, and a bit smaller granted, but will combo into pretty much anything, and by anything I mean preferably waft. On the topic though, once again since Wario does not have hurtboxes on his hands, this move is also very disjointed, and can be hard to beat out because of it. Just makes me wonder what those gloves are made of to protect him that well. Oh well, maybe we'll find out in the next Wario Land sequel that is coming out, never. Dash tag sees the return of the shoulder bash from Brawl, definitely a welcome reintroduction, although it did used to be his F smash back then. While the faceplant move from Smash 4 was fun, and had some interesting jab block things going on, the shoulder bash is generally better, because it can actually kill and is an easy combo from a down tilt. Hitbox wise it's pretty alright, nothing special really. Initially the move is stronger and has 2 hitboxes on his body. The red hitbox is the sweet spot, and it's actually significantly stronger than the sour spot, having 6% parting them. After this, the red hitbox also becomes as weak as the purple hitbox, until the move ends. The later part of the move is actually really weak, so you have to make sure you connect with the sweet spot, or else the move's not going to do too much good for you. Wario's grab is quite run-of-the-mill, nothing about it is too amazing, but in this game that's really just about all you can ask for. It has decent range and frame data, and can allow for some fairly good stage positioning. Aside from that, there's not much to it, but it is a good mix-up option, seeing as pressure elsewhere is really good. Speaking of good pressure, we're now getting into his aerials and starting with neutral air. Wario spins around in the air and the move essentially consists of 2 parts. First, Wario has 3 hitboxes around him, 1 on his body and 2 on his hands. These hitboxes launch you away and have the same power. The hitboxes do pivot around with Wario, meaning there are technically some frames where the move has less range, but this mostly doesn't matter since he has so many active frames. The hitboxes on his arm get a little bit weaker later into the move, which can be very helpful for comboing. Once he has done a complete spin, these hitboxes go away and there's a brief moment where there are no hitboxes. After this, a single hitbox reappears on Wario's body. This one is notably weaker and launches upwards instead of forward. Because of this, at low percentages, you can chain the 2 hits, and get a bit of a combo out of it. And because the move has so little lag, the final hit puts them in a perfect position for extending the combo, which in some situations can be quite devastating. Can also just mention real quick that according to Smash Wiki, this move is actually called Overweight Body, which is just one of the many wonderful names that Wario has on his moves, including such gems as Big Head, Pix Foot Kick, Heavy Buttocks, wild swing ding, and butt press. Just thought it was important to share this vital knowledge with you. Anyway, moving on. Well, speaking of pig's foot kick, here it is. Wario's forward air is another one of those deceptively good moves, for being so simple. It's a kick out in front of Wario, and the hitboxes are just solid. It's just 2 hitboxes, but sometimes that's really all you need. On the first 2 frames it is the strongest, however after this, the move lingers for a long time afterwards, with slightly smaller hitboxes. And once again, due to the low knockback, you might be able to extend a combo, or knock your opponent back into an unfavorable position. It's another good aerial. So for backer, we actually have proper model scaling, which is good since this is one of the few moves not using his hands, and therefore it's not really disjointed. Wario does a backdrop, or just like a back smack. Either way, there's no way that's good for his spine. The move has 2 hitboxes, both of which are on Wario's head. However, they do deal the same damage, meaning the purple one is just there to cover slightly more of Wario's body. The hitboxes are fine and they're pretty strong, though the move has a lot of landing lag relatively speaking, so you definitely want to make sure to auto-cancel it. Again, this is a great example to just show how much of Wario's hurtboxes scale when he uses moves like these. Like, take a look at this visual with hurtboxes. There's really not a lot of space between the hurtboxes and the hitboxes here. The move is still good, but it really can't challenge much, like you would expect from a back air. Then again, Wario is very heavy and deals a bunch of damage, so trading moves every once in a while is probably going to work out in the long run. Now let's give a standing applause, because the next move is up air. Probably one of his best moves. The move only has a single hitbox, but it's a really big one. Of course, keep in mind that Wario's hands are lacking model scaling, and should be quite a bit bigger. However, seeing how Wario's hands do not have hurtboxes, this move is actually just about this disjointed, making it very hard to challenge. The move covers a massive amount of range, and has very little lag. You can land with it, extend combos with it, chain it into pretty much anything you want. It's a key piece to all of the Wario combo shenanigans you're able to do with him, and just a very flexible move overall. For another one of these weird, nonsensical Wario moves, we have down air. Wario drills down in the air, and the move has 3 hitboxes, 2 of which are overlaid. These 2 upper hitboxes hit aerial and grounded opponents individually, and depending on that, you'll either be launched down or up. This hitbox hits both and will also just launch up. Because the aerial one launches you down, if you can just hit that hitbox but miss the other ones, you can effectively do a small spike and probably get a KO on some characters with exploitable recoveries. Though the positioning is a bit tricky. These hitboxes repeat and try to stun you in place, and at the end there's a single hitbox that launches you away. The move is very good off stage because it lasts for so long. And the launch angle is pretty sharp for a move like this. Definitely not something you want to see if you have a slower, predictable recovery. The move even does kill at reasonable %, so it's definitely a good one. Now onto his specials, where we have another collection of pretty out there moves. Up B is the Corkscrew, where Wario spins into the air. The move has 4 hitboxes. Initially they start out a bit spaced out in front of Wario. These hitboxes launch you into Wario as you set up into the rest of the move. After the first 2 frames, they are all centered on Wario as he sends into the air. And they get a bit bigger as well. These hitboxes just stun you in place as you fly into the air along with Wario. A dream I am sure we have all shared at some point. These hitboxes can be a bit inconsistent at times, because of the high knockback of the hitboxes. But they should connect most of the time. Another funny thing about these hitboxes is that each hitbox actually does slightly more damage than the other, with them having a 0.1 damage difference between all the hitboxes, which is a bit weird, but Wario is also a bit weird, so it makes sense. Lastly, at the end of the move, it just launches you with these 2 hitboxes. Pretty underwhelming move overall, both in terms of recovering and being a good move, but there's likely a reason for that, because the move is helped a lot by another certain move, which of course is Bike. This move is extremely flexible and probably one of the most fun and creative moves in the game. Wario pulls out his trusty old bike and starts driving. If you're grounded when you use it, you get these hitboxes. The red one hits grounded opponents and is stronger, while the purple one is aerial and is a bit weaker. The same hitboxes also apply when you use the move in the air. However, the damage of the bike is actually dependent on how fast the bike is moving, and in the air you move a bit slower, meaning it's weaker. But the hitboxes are the same. If Wario jumps off the bike, it will still have the hitbox for a little while, but again it is notably weaker. When driving on the ground, if you turn the bike around, you'll get some hitboxes in the spot you're turning on, which is a nice little detail, but not really too practical overall, since it's so slow. If you hold up during the ride, you'll pop a wheelie, at which point the bike gains new hitboxes. First one while rising up, sending you upwards. After this, it has another one on the lower part of the bike while you're styling on them. Both of these 2 hitboxes are not too strong, but will at least launch them away. When you drop the bike back down, it has this hitbox briefly, which is actually very strong, if not a little hard to land because of the long startup. Lastly, if you jump off or fall off the bike at any moment, it falls on the ground, where it can be picked up and thrown. If you do, it uses this hitbox, covering nearly all of the bike. Wario also has some knockback based armor, being able to tank up to 20 units of knockback. The bike can also be attacked and has 18 HP, and will be destroyed if it takes more than that. On the ground it can be used for all sorts of weird setups, like extending hitboxes and all that stuff. Though for the most part you'll be using it as a recovery option. seeing how it carries you very far both horizontally and vertically. So now let's look at what you have all been waiting for, waft. This is one of those rare super moves only a handful of characters get to have. A move that is usually locked until a certain condition is met. In this case of waft, it actually has 4 different variations, and it changes depending on how long you go without using it. Starting off the match, you have the smallest waft, which actually does not even do any damage. The hitbox looks like this, and any opponents within the range will trip unless they are shielding or in the air. Obviously, this one is just kind of a joke since it has an absurd amount of lag afterwards. After waiting 15 seconds, you'll get low waft, which is a notable upgrade. This one actually deals damage and has these hitboxes. Or I would like to say these in plural, but due to an oversight or change in plans late in development, the 2 hitboxes on the sides here are completely inaccessible, and are entirely covered by the dominant red hitbox. The weirdest part is that these 2 hitboxes are actually notably weaker than the red one, leading me to believe that they must have planned for this move to have a sour spot at some point. But as it stands, those 2 hitboxes have no way to ever actually see gameplay. It's a rare case of hitboxes that are actually present in the data, coded and functional, but due to the rules of hitboxes, they will never work. It's very interesting to see stuff like this. But anyways, the red hitbox is pretty huge and deals a good amount of damage, but it's nothing crazy. After 55 seconds, you will get half waft, which is arguably the best waft out of all of them, seeing how it is the fastest and therefore easiest to combo into, and still has a lot of power relatively speaking. This waft is yet another single hitbox and is active for 2 frames. After use, Wario will also fly into the air a bit, meaning it can be hard to punish. And it doesn't have too much lag all things considered. Like I said, it being 2 frames faster than full waft can often be a make or break on whether a combo will connect or not. Though it is a bit harder to use than full waft, since it does eventually turn into full waft if you wait too long, whereas full waft stays the same until you use it. Speaking of full waft, it's the final and most ultimate form of waft Wario possesses. This one emerges after waiting a total of 110 seconds. And while it is a bit slower than half waft, it does make up for that in sheer power. This move is absurdly strong, and the hitbox is certainly nothing to trifle with either. It starts out with a classic huge circle around Wario for 2 frames. After this, the move actually does extend and has a hitbox on Wario as he rockets into the air. Granted, this one is way weaker, but hey, free hitbox I guess. This continues for a while until it goes away. Wario flies pretty far after using this, so I guess you could use this as a last chance recovery option if bike is offline, but I don't think I would count on that. The move does have some brief super armor, which can come in handy, but it's definitely not that huge overall. Waft is an extremely powerful tool, and pretty much something you have to deal with at least sometime in the match. A proper timed waft can turn the entire tide of a match. In Ultimate, some characters just got it, I guess, while others, kinda don't. For our last special, we have Chomp, which is a fairly simple command grab move. Wario tries to bite you, and while doing so, he has 3 hitboxes. The outer yellow hitbox here is for items, in which on contact he will close his mouth and eat the item, to various results depending on the item. The outer purple hitbox is for grounded opponents, while the innermost purple is for aerial. Should you get bit, you will be chomped on for a bit, before getting launched out. Wario also heals slightly for each bite, which I don't really feel like I want to think about too deeply, so let's just move on to these smash attacks. Now for up smash, we have another move where the lack of model scaling is pretty self-evident. It's a headbutt in an arc, only having a single hitbox. The hitbox is pretty decently sized for a smash attack. Wario's head is also intangible during the move, so even if the visual doesn't model scale, it doesn't really matter too much. It's a pretty decent smash attack, but it is very slow and laggy on the other side of the coin. So on F smash, we actually have the reverse case of most other visuals so far. Here, Wario's fist is actually way too big and does not represent how the hurtbox scales. You can see this clearly when comparing the hitboxes, because they are very drowned out in the hand here. Now, despite what it looks like, these hitboxes are actually pretty big, and the move does hit pretty hard, though as you might expect, it's also super slow and has a ton of lag. It's a bit of a long shot when you go for it, but if you can land it, it's surely worth your time. But big emphasis on that if there. Finally, we have down smash, which rounds out the trend of having smash attacks with a single hitbox. Wario does a breakdance on the floor. The move starts out being stronger and gets weaker and smaller as it goes on. It's not a fantastic smash attack. None of Wario's are, to be fair, but at least this one has a ton of active frames, which can give it some fringe use in certain situations, where such a thing would be useful. However, that is all for Wario. Definitely a strange character, both in terms of hitboxes and just character. He's made quite a name for himself in Ultimate, but is still one of those one person gets really good results with character, while most other people really don't, or the character just remains very underplayed. But I think Wario's just a pretty solid character overall, and the comeback factor of Waft is something you can never really sleep on. He's had a tough road getting to Ultimate, but I think the ride was well worth it for him. So yeah, that about does it I think. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.